You can get ad-free episodes of the Forest School podcast, as well as bonus episodes and exclusive access to upcoming guests to ask them questions before anybody else finds out about it, simply by visiting patreon.com/Children of the Forest.
You're listening to the Forest School podcast with Lewis Ames and Gemma Southerden.
Hello listeners, we're in the woods and we've got a bit of slightly waffly one today, haven't we, Lewis?
Slightly waffly.
And I must
this
say,
is like the inside of a stuffed toy. That's how much fucking padding and waffle there is.
Or a waffle dressing gown. Those really nice ones that you get not in your life but at a hotel or a spa.
I've got one because I stole one from a spa.
You're joking me! You naughty boy!
I didn't steal it, my friend gave it to me.
Hasty backtrack there.
No. She did, because I used to work at Lush and there was a spa there, and so they, at the end of the, this thing is like heavy, and I'm 6 foot tall and it reaches the ground.
Has it retained its nice crunchy waffleness?
Oh no, because I don't have a tumble dryer.
Exactly. It needs to be like professionally laundered in order to be the waffly.
Everything
delight.
I own needs to be professionally laundered.
But anyway, so it's really sweary, this one. And I don't think I swore. I think I said chamizzle at one point when I could have sworn, but you just went for it. You were really relaxed and just went for it. So just as a heads up, I mean, they're all pretty sweary, but this one's especially sweary. I think there's some pretty strong language in this one. And not in a kind of ranty way, just in a relaxed, passionate chatting. So we're talking about socialisation, social conditioning, saying please and thank you, saying sorry, all those kind of things, alternative schooling, we touch on neurodiversity, we talk about...
it's like a lot of social masking.
Yeah, all of those kind of things. And so it does wander around a little bit, but hopefully it is like thought-provoking, and we decided that we don't know what the answer is, but we would love to hear more from other people, which is, I feel, how we end every podcast, really. But yeah, enjoy.
That'll do, and then that'll do. No, that feels very official now because we're both writing things.
This is a very, very professional podcast, Lewis. Always. And forever. Actually, it's not. We're literally doing an episode where we're like, I think we might not know stuff. We're approaching this issue with curiosity because it kept coming up in our conversations and things I was seeing on other conversations on forums and that. And so then we were talking about it and I was like, let's podcast about it.
Yes, and it has brought me out of, I feel like you you'll be able to attest the fact that like I just had no mojo this week.
Yeah.
Earlier I was in a hole and I was like, oh, should I talk about being in a hole? And I'm going to talk about being in a hole just because I want to like honesty, and also not to just be like, Forest School's great, man, it's always outside and it's always like, and sometimes we sarcastically talk about like, oh, it's always sunny and it's always this, but like the weather is just coming to a, like I said today, I'm at the end of my energy. I need spring to start rolling. And I had just I said for the first time in like a long time, I was just coming, I still came in, had a great day, but like setting up, I was just like...
You arrived with no spoons.
I had no spoons and I was just like, I have no love for this today. And that's healthy to sometimes just be like, nah, not other stuff. And so, but then thinking, it was like, what did I do to get out of it? And once the ball starts, I think we've all had that thing where you're like, oh, I'm not sure if this is going to be, like you're setting up in any school ground or you're, doing, and then as soon as the kids are there and you start pretending you're okay because that's part of the teaching act, and then that tricks you into being okay, which is a very good trick. Also, I cut some firewood, did some whole body big, not like splitting kindling, like getting the proper maul and using my body, and then also thinking about this stuff, like getting out of the literal and metaphorical, like getting out of the mud and going like, I'm gonna think about this thing. Squirrels everywhere, man. that kind of helped get me. I'm feeling like I'm coming out of it, and I'm ready for a bit of a holiday.
Yes, end of termitis.
Have you got end of termitis?
Yeah, definitely. Everyone has. But we are. Can I try and explain what we're talking about? I don't feel like I'm going to be able to do it very concisely.
Well, I think
so. What we're talking about is that thing where
we're broadly talking about.
Go on.
We're broadly. We weren't realised. I think the theme is social conditioning.
Yeah.
That was our like, hey, there's this example. Hey, have you thought about this thing? And we like umbrellaed it and went, oh, we're talking about this thing, and we confined. It's not like, it's like, oh, how do you? It's not about distilling stuff down to the minutiae. It's about going broader and going like, how do we feel about this thing, and what can we find out?
What do you think about this approach to this?
Yeah.
So I googled social conditioning just now to try and more nutshell it.
Yeah.
And so Wikipedia says social conditioning is the sociological process of training individuals in a society to respond in a manner generally approved by the society in general and peer groups within society. Okay, so you got that.
Yeah.
And then it says this concept is stronger than that of socialization, which is the process of inheriting norms, customs and ideology. Okay? So you've got social conditioning is training to fit in with the society's
like explicit, this
training.
is how we're going to behave. Yeah.
Whereas socialization is inheriting it kind of more naturally occurring. So, if you are in a...
Sorry, there's a squirrel going for the cafetiere, and I really want to see what happens if a squirrel gets into the cafetiere. Because we're very posh and we have a cafetiere.
I mean, they're already quite hyper, aren't they? Can you imagine the squirrel on coffee?
You ready? He'd go fucking nuts,
Oh my God. Yeah, so I kind of felt like that was kind of the crux of it, because
yes.
So we were talking a little bit about like please and thank you, like different
and sorry and all these like the bits of social oil that grease the wheels of society, the wheels of whatever conversation,
and various things that we have read and approaches and ethoses that we've explored will have kind of quite firm ideas on this. So we often talk about the book It's Okay Not to Share by Heather Schumacher. Have you got to a place where you could kind of summarise a little argument from her on the matter? Yeah,
I've got it. So this was to do like a, when people come on the podcast and we go, how did you get to forest school? This is like part of like, how did you get to your ethos? So basically her thing is about compassion. Mm-hmm. So she talks about actions, not words, that, children aren't communicating verbally all of the time, that they don't necessarily understand why they're saying sorry, that you don't want, this is her saying, that you don't want them to think that sorry absolves everything. Sorry draws a line under it, done, no more need be, which is something that landed really well with me. Like I've seen that in a situation of like,
I said sorry.
Or like,
why are they still upset? And why are you still talking about it? I said sorry.
Yeah. And then because then you end up in a weird place where you're trying to explain the nuances to a learner of like, yes, but you intonated down and the tone of your voice, and you're like, what are you doing?
You shouted sorry in their face and ran away.
Yes.
Yeah.
Or the recipient is like expected to be like, well, they did come and twat you in the face with a spanner, but they have said sorry now, so you should just be all right with it and move on.
I saw an interesting thing amongst some children quite recently where one of them was kind of like, not angry, but kind of going, but you said, and then a bit more back and forth. And then one of them went, yeah, and I said sorry about that. And the other person went, yeah, I forgive you. And then there was like a silence. They were like, oh, okay, cool. It was like over, and it was really funny. It was like it was like they both genuinely had said sorry and genuinely had forgiven, but that message hadn't kind of got across. And once it got across, they were completely cool. Absolutely fine. It's like, I forgive you. I thought that was really interesting as a little exchange. But yeah, and her whole thing, Heather Schumacher, is like some children they haven't learned empathy yet, right? Am I right?
Yes. You know, so it is meaningless until you have theory of mind. It is kind of so that, and then that's where you get into this conversation, like to jump in 2-footed. That's when you get into like, right, but is it worth learning a script if that helps you get ahead, or not get ahead? If that helps you, you know, grease the wheels, and helps you like, the squirrel's getting so close. If saying sorry is like, you don't understand it, but then that saves relationships, or that saves whatever.
It's so interesting.
But I think there's something about these. I would still say, okay, not to share. I still think it's a good thing, right? We're not binning it. We're just like reviewing different sources and going, how do we get to this thing? And there's something about.
Hello, owl.
That's an owl in the middle of the afternoon. People are going to think we're making this up. Like, whenever we can't think of...
Oh. It's all kicking off.
I'm sorry. I've lost my train of thought now.
Heather Schumacher.
No, it's gone. So I was going to talk about who is the scripting for, because that changes. So I think there's something about like a lot of that level of like scripting of like, you need to go say sorry or say thank you or those things. There's 2 parts to this, which is like, in some ways people are conscious that like they need to get learners greasing the wheels and, you know, being what was the word, socially conditioned
or socialized.
Well, no, if you're explicitly doing it, that is social conditioning, right?
Yeah.
And socialization is what you would pick up through modelling and through whatever else. Right. So there's an element of social conditioning which needs reflecting on, it's not wholly just benefiting that person all of the time. Sometimes it is, I am on the playground and I will have an easier life if I have a system that means like 2 kids have disagreed over break time. Oh, look,
here's the flow chart.
Here's the flow chart. One kid said, sorry, right, done, now I'm on, because there's another dispute I've got to go and do. Or, you know, in the case of like, please and thank you, it's partly about helping that, I'm going to say children, because it's normally children in this scenario, that child understand that that's what's expected in situations. But it is also sometimes about us as the adults with those children going, oh God, I don't want to be seen as the one. So that's where
I don't want to be seen as permissive. I don't want to be seen as lazy.
Or someone who's got rude children. Yeah. Their actions reflect on me, reflect on the family, and shall bring disrepute. That's not me doing a wee. That is the parachute. Doing a wee, moving in the wind. I wasn't punctuating that speech with a little wee.
And another one. Lovely. Yeah, because that's when you, as a practitioner or a parent, if you are a parent, feel the eyes are on you the most. Like, you don't feel like the eyes are on you when you're doing something really cool and great and you're just like, my practice is so awesome, check me out, check out my connection and my communication skills are so good. You really feel the eyes on you in those challenging moments of conflict, or like an incident has happened, and you know, whether or not it's true, whether or not people's eyes are on you, you do feel like oh right, okay, I've now got to really think about how I react to this, rather than and also I find it really interesting thinking about your instinct, because your instinct may sometimes, you know, a lot of the times we're told, oh, trust your instinct, go with your gut, you know, don't prevent sort of barriers to communication. If you've got this instinct to communicate or to connect with somebody, then, you know, don't hold back from that. But in cases like this, is your instinct coming from a place of maybe your own upbringing?
Like self-preservation?
Well, like I'm just thinking about like your own process maybe of social conditioning and whether that was healthy or not. Do you know what I mean? It's like those things where you go, well, I was brought up that way and therefore I will do this with the children that I work with. Or you go, I was brought up that way and it sucked, so I will definitely not do that. And so in times of conflict, when your stress levels are high, their stress levels are high, you feel like people's eyes are on you, is your instinctive reaction to be trusted, or is it coming from a place of like, oh, well, the words that were used when I was a child, when there was a conflict situation, either from any adult that I was around, were this. So bam, that's what comes out of my mouth, and then afterwards you go, oh shucks, actually that wasn't what I wanted to communicate.
Yes. And there's something that's just clicked in my head, which is so we're going to talk about alternative education in a minute.
Yeah.
But there's something here which I think is this is a relevant thing, which is a societal thing, which is like possibly an expectation that learning is like confined to school. And so people are very open with school should be a place where like children they can experiment, they should get things, I think if you asked people, they say like, is school a place where children can get things wrong? Yes, that's how they learn. This is when you see works in progress, blah 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 blah. But when we see children out in the world, say buying something from a shop, it's a lot harder to explain or to like have the other person, the other side of the till, understand without going like, we're learning about please and thank you at the moment.
Yes.
People would respond very differently to that, because it's almost like learning happens at school, socialization happens at school. When they're out, the like tolerance for work in progress social skills or work in progress emotional skills is lower. The expectation is.
Well, I don't know. I think you could argue
different.
I think you could easily argue the other way. I think it depends who you're with.
But do you know what I mean? Though there is something about like, if we're talking about like the adult that's with the kids, feeling like it's harder to say we're working on saying sorry at a public thing than it is to like in a school. Well, Sophie didn't say sorry after she hit him. No, and the school's doing some learning on that, and the school right,
yeah, maybe. I kind of want to backtrack a little bit in terms of, because I feel like maybe we haven't made something explicit because we've talked about it off podcast, like at the beginning of these wanderings, which was that like there are arguments that say, especially the kind of forest school approach, that you aren't gonna like force people to do things. It's a very low arousal, learning together,
high autonomy.
Low, like not too much hierarchy. We had a whole episode about hierarchies recently, and so it's the kind of place where, I mean, some practitioners listen to this and go, absolutely, I am like, you say sorry, you say please, you say thank you. That's cool. That's your approach. That's fine. But I'm just talking about like forest school can be a place where alternative approaches can be considered. So you might want to think, well, I don't want to be too authoritarian about like, say please, say thank you. But because I want to, I'm hoping that they're going to pick that up through modelling, and I want them to genuinely mean it, and they haven't developed their sense of empathy yet, and I'm actually thinking about all those things, so I've got the time and space to do it, as opposed to maybe a more traditional school approach where you've got like 50,000 other things on your mind. But then there's so you can see an argument for going, well, no, I'm not going to enforce that right now. But then you have the argument that you mentioned about are you doing those learners a disservice by not addressing this as an issue and just completely letting it go, because they will go out into the world maybe not saying these things, and therefore they will have a more difficult time. They may be perceived as rude, their behaviour will be misunderstood, they will be treated in a different way because they are not using, as the Wikipedia thing said at the beginning, the acceptable means of communication or the acceptable behaviour in the society that they live in. And they'll be maybe the exception to the norm in that regard. If most people are having this like quite traditional, more social conditioning approach to these words or these behaviours, and I mean this could even include things like, which is a whole other podcast topic in itself, like tidying up, for example, or joining in with something that is for the benefit of everybody. These kind of like socialisation-y type behaviours, like putting things back, or
like social expectations.
Yeah, or like behaviour that would be seen as considerate to the wider group, even if it puts you out a little bit, So are you doing them a disservice? Hello, squirrels. If you just think, oh, I'm not going to worry about that, I'm not going to stress about it, because it will naturally come when they're ready. And then what if it doesn't? And I feel like that is kind of like a crux of a bit of a unschooling approach, you know, like the kind of worries that if you've made a decision to do unschooling, which is the process of just children naturally learning things and following their own interests without you being dictatorial about it, that I see so many people kind of writing about unschooling and going, well, yeah, but will they really learn anything? Am I doing them a disservice? Like, you've got to...
It's a big trust the process, isn't it? It's
a huge trust the process thing. And then with the whole social stuff that we're talking about, yeah, if it doesn't happen, you know, is it your fault that hasn't happened? Or even in the interim, like you're saying, maybe it takes a child longer for it to naturally click. Maybe it's going to, but they, you know, in the period of, you know, maybe they're like 11 or 12 and they're not doing it, and most other 11 or 12-year-olds might be doing it, and then they have those years of being perceived as being a bit uppity, and then they're going to get a ruder response in return, and all this kind of thing. So sorry, I wanted to just backtrack to kind of, because we'd had that conversation, hadn't we, by the car about a week ago, and so that's why we wanted to kind of investigate this and talk about different approaches. And it also came up on a forum that I was in, where somebody said that they'd been working in progressive schools for a while, or kind of alternative settings, and they said, I kind of feel like I want to apologise to the person who wrote this post, because I feel like I'm kind of taking their work and everyone who contributed and kind of going, and that's what I'm talking about now. But I'm not going to say their name, and other people might have seen this post. It's really interesting anyway. Lots of people, lots of... Can
we just for 1 second?
Yeah. Where were we? Yeah. So, really interesting conversation. And they were saying they worked in progressive settings for a while and they loved it, but they wanted to ask if other people had the same experience about children appearing to be like disrespectful and rude. And obviously lots of people kind of asking, well, how do you define that? What do you mean disrespectful or rude? And I think they did qualify it a little bit and say, well, things like, you know, name calling to their peers, not being respectful to the staff that were working there, not joining in with requests for tidying up or putting things away, things like that.
This kind of sound like some cool kids, man.
But it kind of ties into a lot of like forest school debates about tidying up.
Sure.
You know, lots of people going, how do you do this? And people go, oh, we have the tidying up song and everyone gets involved. And or people go, no, don't even bother. I just let them go and then I just do it myself, or, you know, halfway in between. And
there was a range of responses, wasn't there?
It was just so interesting, wasn't it? Can you remember any of the responses off the top of your head?
Well, no, I don't want to talk about any specific response because I don't...
Or ideas.
So, I think there's one thing which is worth, like, caveating this whole conversation. Happened in, on Facebook, alternative provision place. Yeah. Now, anecdotally, I think you and I would both sort of acknowledge that, like, compared to mainstream education, alternative education has either a higher percentage of neurodiverse learners, or has a higher awareness of the neurodiverse learners that are in there. Maybe that the same percentages in mainstream education, but they're not seen in the same way. Anyway, so things like that response to why are the children rude, and lots of the conversation became about neurodiversity, became about scripting, became about like, which is, it's not that they're separate topics. It's just worth like thinking about this. Like different learners have different needs, and in the same way that, you know, we were talking a minute ago about like what you bring from your own childhood, from your own social conditioning or socialization, carries forwards. And actually there was a lot of stuff in that comment thread about people saying, well, I see people who had a rough time at school, they didn't get on with the social conditioning, therefore they go completely the other way, and they're, if anything, you and I sometimes reflect on stuff and go, is that they were saying these parents go the other way and they become permissive, and that is the word that you and I use quite often when we're reflecting and going, are we being helpful here or are we being permissive? And like, that's the word.
But it's a strange word, isn't it? Because you think about what it actually means or what it infers, and it just means like, oh, allowing it. And like, allowing it is cool. Like, oh, allow it. I just allow it. Like, what's the problem with it? But
I guess overly permissive would be the term, isn't it?
Overly permissive in terms of verging on like being lazy as a practitioner, being like
negligent. You could move it into, couldn't you?
Yeah, and the category that we were just talking about like doing them a disservice through your own lack of effort.
Oh well, I think it's because over permissiveness it sort of stems from not being like intentional and reflective about what you're doing. Yeah. And so that's the perception, is that like you're not encouraging your children to say thank you, or you're not like making it because you don't care, because you haven't reflected on it.
Yeah. Rather than it's a choice.
Rather than it's a choice and we're doing this and we have this faith in a system, we have this faith in a pedagogy. And I think they do present in different ways. I think from the outside, I mean, I'd imagine you and I could, because we spend way too much time thinking about this stuff. But I think anybody from the outside could see different styles of parenting or teaching or whatever else. And you do get a sense for like, this is a choice you've made. Yeah. Or this is something you're allowing to happen because... You
don't really know. It's freaking you out a little bit. You haven't... Yeah.
Or it's the easier choice.
Yeah.
Which,
or you just don't view it as important. For you. But other members of society might find it important.
And we talked before we started having a conversation, then we were like, we need to stop because we need to record this, about how for some neurodiverse learners, it's like...
Neurodivergent learners.
Sorry, yes, you're right. Neurodivergent learners. It is like offering scripting, but not forcing scripting.
Yeah, so this is another conversation that I saw somewhere else, and I really want to remember where it was so I could credit them. What I meant to say about I feel bad like taking this conversation, I mean, like, I want to credit these people who have taken their spoons and their energy to writing these things on social media.
We can link to these things, can't we?
Yeah, we can.
So people can go and look and see how because this conversation will develop.
Yeah, and in no way do I want to feel like I am judging any of the responses. I'm absolutely not. I'm going, this is really great food for thought. Thank you for prompting, us to think about these things. I'm really glad that people take the time to comment on these things. So I just wanted to clarify that. And there was another conversation that I saw about somebody talking about the difference between offering script, again, in these very social situations.
We should be clear what we mean about scripts.
Can I talk first about like masking?
Yes.
So if you're masking, if you're a neurodivergent person and you're masking, you are taking action to conform to society's view of what is normal in inverted commas, and masking a lot of your natural inclinations, your natural behaviours, whether that be like hiding the fact that you want to stim, whether that be not behaving in the way that you want to behave, either physically, verbally, whatever. And so the community agrees that like excessive masking can be damaging. It can be damaging to your mental health. But you can also argue that we're all doing a certain amount of masking some of the time in order to be accepted into society, because if we all acted on our impulses all the time, and that we've all got these filters in our brains that stop us saying things that are like overly sexual, overly violent, just weird, all the rest of it, and the only place you can really get away with talking about that stuff is going, I had a weird dream last night. Anyway.
That's a good get out, isn't it?
Even then, oh my God, I talk...
Doesn't work all the time though, does it? I had a weird dream last night and you were a cunt in it, and you were a piece of shit.
And sometimes you tell people your dream and you're like, but it was just a dream. They still look at you like, oh my God, you are a psychopath. Anyway, maybe that's just me. Oh God. Yes. So this person was saying, obviously I do not want this child to overly mask. I know that would not be healthy for them. However, is it encouraging them to overly mask if I offer them a script? So for example, when someone gives something to you, you can say thank you. It can make that other person feel happy. That's what some people like to do. You can say thank you, I really enjoyed it. Or when someone says how are you, even if your instinct is to go like, what is this small talk, you don't even really care, I'm not even going to answer you because that is a ridiculous flipping question. You can say to people, well, when somebody says hi, how are you, you can say I'm really well, thank you. Even if you don't feel that, even if that's a lie, la 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 la.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? Like that level of like, I'm learning this script. And then some people's responses were like, oh no, I wouldn't advise it or whatever. And some people were saying, well, as an adult, an autistic adult, for example, I have developed these scripts for myself in order to survive, and I've got a Rolodex of these phrases about like that I can scroll through mentally and go, they've said this thing, in this situation I go to this phrase and that's what I do, and that's how I grease the wheels, continue, manage social relationships, all the rest of it. And I've got it down pat now, so it doesn't take up too much of my energy in order to do that, because I'm not really having to think about it and grasp for the right words to say. It's just there in my Rolodex, and I've done that for myself anyhow. And if a parent or an adult had done that for me as a child, I would find it a lot easier now, because I wouldn't have had to make those for myself. And that there is an argument for that in terms of just offering them, not going, this is the rule and you must say thank you because I've given you something, but go, you know, some people here's the thing you can say if you want to. And that kind of brings me to this thing about, like, one of the comments in that original of the forum was, you don't need to teach respect and empathy and community spirit and connection. It's all there already underneath the painful feelings. And I thought it was such an interesting thing. Like, you don't need to teach these things, or do you? That's too much. I've just put lots of ideas there in a massive old ball.
Yes, well, I was reflecting on... you were talking about, you know, as you were describing scripting there, and I'm hearing it come in, and I'm thinking, actually, do you know what? That's more or less explicit modelling in my head. That is the continuum of modelling, in that some people are very good at watching someone do something once without any explicit stuff and going, when mummy goes to the shop, she opens the door and says, after you. And they don't need any more prompting because their brain sees that and goes, I will do what mummy does. And that's where you get that stuff that works out through play of, like, then they play, I will hold the door for after you, Teddy. Boop, 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 boop. Right. Some people learn like that. Some people need slightly more explicit stuff, which is like, we talk about before about how we verbalize our train of thoughts. So as you're approaching the door, you might be going, especially, you know, people do this sort of instinctively with younger children, and go, I'm going to open the door in case, and hold it for that person in case because their arms are full. That's the level. The next level, the next bit more explicit modelling is like, out of that situation, being explicit about when we get to the door, we might have to do this. You know, they're just continuums on the modelling spectrum, aren't they? And then also I was thinking about, if you have if your belief is that socialisation is the way through modelling, not through social conditioning, and it will just click. Yeah. How do you know? And I don't have an answer to this. How do you know when it's clicked if you don't do any social conditioning? If it's not, I was going for the bird feeder. So there's a squirrel on the parachute. It's all very wobbly. It's on the orange rope. It's just called down a rope. You can't get that, can you? No, you look a fool. So you might say, oh, it doesn't count them saying sorry because I've told them they have to say sorry. Now, if someone watches you modelling saying sorry, then they get in a situation and they just go, I'll say sorry because that's what mummy says. You haven't told them to say sorry, but they're still doing it for the same reason as, like, I don't really understand this.
You do see learners who do that really amazingly well. Like, they really, those phrases are so, they just come out like an adultly crafted phrase, and they come out so naturally seeming. But if you know the child well, you know that is...
You can see how deep it goes. Yeah. That's the kind of thing, isn't it?
I find it fascinating.
Yeah. So there's something there about it of, like, if you take away the forced element, because that's something that I think it is easier to go, should you be forcing social conditioning, social niceties? I can't think of a strong reason for forcing it.
What about
that wouldn't be met by, I mean, I'm showing my own biases here, but that wouldn't be met by reiterating the impact that it has on other people. So not saying you have to say sorry, but if every time you go, would you like to say, you could say sorry to them if you want. If that person keeps going, no, there you go. You know, if you, I guess I have faith in that process. If I kept going, oh, okay, I imagine that's going to make X feel a bit worse then, and not with no expectation that that changes it, but like.
But I think your idea of that has changed over the years, because we had a conversation.
Never.
About this
I have fixed that.
when we just started working together. Do you remember? I think we've already talked about it on the podcast before. So, I think you'd literally just read "Okay, Not to Share," and you told me to get it. Yeah. Because because some learners were having a discussion about whether or not to say sorry. It was little ones, I think. Yeah. And yeah, we had a really interesting conversation about it, and I think your attitude has changed. But, you know, that's.
It feels to me
always changed.
It feels to me like a pendulum swing. Like, you know, you go from an extreme. For me, social conditioning made sense. You know, we'll teach them to say sorry. We'll explicitly do this thing, and then you get some information that changes it, and I swing really far the other way. And I was like, don't even want to hear the word sorry. I don't want to know. I don't want to. You know, sorry is bullshit. Fuck you if you say sorry. And then the pendulum sort of comes back and it rests, and it sort of goes like that. You know, it goes left, right, left, right, left, right, left, right, left, right, left, right. Yeah.
And then we have conversations like this, and it moves it again.
And it just pushes the pendulum, doesn't it? It gets you thinking. Yeah. I did hear myself, I think I told you, in one of my children the other week, where, through socialisation, one of my children, it says sorry. You know, when something happens, it goes, oh, sorry. Which, you know, socialisation through films, through books, through whatever, right? And I, with some, you know, that word is like, it's not triggering. That sounds very like extreme, but like that word is unfamiliar in my day-to-day life. That's not the right word. I'm not explaining this very well. Anyway, it would say, I'm sorry. And I sometimes will go, I don't think you are sorry. Can you come and make this right? Because them just going, sorry,
I think that comes from Heather Schumacher, right? Because she talks about, like, if children don't... so going back to the thing about, like, empathy doesn't need to be taught. Yeah. Which is such a... Like, that, again, that could be a whole podcast in itself, couldn't it? But she talks about... so if you hurt somebody, for example, that it's not about the word sorry. It's about showing them that you care and that you're regretful and it's not going to happen again, and you care about them. So she might encourage an approach. She's like, oh, you model and you notice the person's feelings. So you say, oh, that person now looks really sad because they got hit. I wonder if there's anything that they would like. Perhaps we could get them a drink. Perhaps we could offer them or if it's a tower that gets knocked over,
maybe we could help them rebuild it. Maybe we could,
so restorative action, basically.
Yes, restorative action.
As opposed to the word sorry. And through modelling it and encouraging the learner to participate in that you are really teaching empathy, because you're really focusing on the results, the impact of both the negative experience and the positive experience. Like, if we do this, maybe that might make them feel happier, it might make them feel better, which is really prompting social connection, which, as I believe, is like, that is the key. That is the key to life, basically. If there's one skill that you can give people, the ability to better socially connect in whatever way they would make them happy is,
But so I realised, just to finish this anecdote about my children.
Oh, sorry.
No, it's fine. So one of them would say, sorry, I can't hear that in the same way, so I would go, no, sorry. And so one of my other children, the other child, picked up on that. And so if there was a genuine accident, they're rolling around on the sofa and someone falls off or someone gets knocked, and one of them would go, oh, sorry. And in a state of upset, I heard one of my other children go, you're not sorry. And I was like, shit. You've just shut down anything restorative. They were shutting down any chance of making amends because I had modelled that, like, sorry was not a thing that we do in this house.
Right.
And, like, I was like, oh, I've got this wrong. I've really got this wrong. And you hear it, when I heard it coming back, I was like, no, you know, that's not, it was so stark and like, oh, okay, we haven't opened the door to this going forwards, we're just shutting it and going like.
Do you think that's tied to what we talked about the other day about like fingerprint needs, or like a kind of a bit of a trigger button for you in terms of like what was making you so, like, you know, you said sorry is a bit of a triggering word, but that's not the right way. Like, I wonder if there's something there that you've realised that you didn't like the end result of that process, but there was, I'll stop trying to psychoanalyze you now.
Pick me apart on a recording.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, I found myself giving my kids a script about like saying goodbye the other day before we were talking about all of this, and then doing some more reading about it. I was like, oh, okay, now I feel kind of reassured by the way I approached it, I hope. But in terms of my kids just find it really, really hard to say goodbye, like especially with people that they I was going to say people, especially people they don't know very well, but even people they do know well. They have like a really good friend over and their friend says goodbye and they just don't answer. I don't know why. And it was really bothering me, but I didn't want to like tell them off for it. I didn't want to be like, and again in that book it's like, you know, oh, hug grandma, hug. I was like, no, it's like, it's about you know, them having control over their own actions. You know, if they don't want to do something and it really isn't hurting anybody else, then where's the harm in it? But then you go back to that thing about, well, but it makes you look pretty weird, and you know, and it makes the other person feel strange that they're just left hanging and they're saying goodbye and there's just no answers, just silence. So I did do that whole like, you know what, when someone says goodbye to you, if you say goodbye back again, like, you know, if you say goodbye back again, it makes them feel like they've been heard and that the moment is finished and then they can leave. And if you don't, then it makes them feel a little bit like strange and maybe a little bit sad because they've said something to you and then you haven't responded and like they're not important. And yeah, so you can, you know, you could say goodbye, see you soon.
Yeah. And
you could say that and that would make them feel nice. Whether or not it has any impact, I don't know. But
well, I think also, yeah, that's definitely true. I was talking to someone the other day, and oh, actually no, this was part of our earlier conversation. There's one that we didn't record. Talking about children coming across as rude in alternative provisions, and I was saying that I think so. Some people who are familiar with unschooling will be familiar with this idea that like you've got de-school. Both the learner has to de-school and you as a parent have to de-school, which is just like shaking all that stuff off, social, emotional, academic, just shaking it off and going, okay, now I'm ready to make some...
to learn in a new way.
Yeah. I've got to process all the stuff that's been potentially traumatic, then I can move forward. I actually think that is part of what you might see in a social conditioning way in learners being rude in an alternative provision, which is like if they've come from school, let's say, that they have been socially conditioned that like you must say thank you when someone gives something to you, and that will be done through carrot and stick. You know, it's conditioning, it is punishment and reward. And then when they come to an alternative provision that maybe doesn't have that punishment and reward, they don't do that thing because they sort of have to shake it off and go, oh, there's no, you know, you don't, you know, that typical thing of like handing something to someone and then pulling it back and going, what do you say? Right. And once they go, oh, I don't have to say thank you here, or like, you know, you need to, I'm not giving it to you if you say please. Say please. Oh, you didn't say, you know, that stuff. Once you remove that, as is like obvious from every like conditioning study, once you remove the punishments and rewards, those behaviours are so much less likely to stick. And so what you might be seeing is someone like de-social conditioning before the uptick. So you might be seeing them go, oh my god, this is so relieving to not have every conversation be an argument and not have just to speak on behalf of the other side for a minute, You know, that, and not every conversation is a battle. Not every conversation is a like, okay, you knew what I meant though, and you know that I like you, so can you not make this a fight? Because it's normally the last bit of a conversation as well. So you're like leaving with that sour taste in your mouth of like, oh, I went over and can I make this? I'm making a thing and I'd love to. Oh, wow, that sounds like you're making a great thing. Let me get resources for you. Yes, I'm getting the resources that I want. That's great. Say thank you. Thank you. Gone. Last bit, bang, smack over the head. Whereas you might be having that period of time of going like, oh, that's so joyful to not, and then you, I guess you hope that the uptick back is then through modelling and through other stuff.
And made me think about like the differences of situations. So that scenario you just described, where it's like everyone, like this flow state happening, you know, it's just like, oh yeah, yeah. That's one situation, isn't it? And then there's another situation where, for example, just to use for example, everyone is now sitting down around the circle because someone has gone ding-a-ling-a-ling. The popcorn that me and Josie have made is ready. Me and Josie have been working on this popcorn, and we have popped the popcorn, and it was really hard work, and we got the fire going, and this is all internal, by the way, I'm not saying this out loud, and everyone is cold
Sometimes
and
we
hungry.
Say it out loud.
No,
but in this example it's internal.
And then you and Josie dish out the popcorn, and literally nobody says thank you. Maybe they don't even look at you. They are just shoving popcorn into their face and talking to the person next to them, or whatever. And that feels very different to I've given you a pair of scissors while you were in the flow of doing a thing, you know, and then how you might address, like if you are trying to model.
Yeah, it's almost like how much emotional, in the example of please and thank you, it's like how much emotional weight was invested in this act of giving a pair of scissors.
But how are they supposed to know that? Like that's the thing. I think often we might feel like, well, you know, the popcorn, it was really hard to get the fire going and blah, blah, blah. But they haven't seen any of that schmizzle. They've been busy playing down the hill. So or they don't understand the process of popcorn making, or they have seen it done, but they've never done it themselves, so they don't know how that feels, and do you know what I mean?
Or they don't have the spoons to a theory of mind it out. You know, they're just like,
or they're just not even thinking about it, because they are thinking about that conversation with their friends, so they're in a different kind of flow that's got nothing to do with you or the product, you know. So
how can you impart to someone how much energy has gone into your thing? I mean, it's got to just be explicit, hasn't it? It's got to be that thing of like...
We will model with the food scenario, won't we? We've talked about it before, where, like, you know, if you've cooked something, I will go, oh, thanks, Lewis. I know that looked like it was really hard work, and blah, 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 blah. Yeah. But whether that...
It's a thing in my house.
Sounds like, whoa.
Every dinner...
Everyone else, it may well do.
Every dinner in my house comes now with a thanks for making it.
Yeah.
And do you know what? This is a really interesting thing of social conditioning, because sometimes that thanks for making it is not said in the most earnest, thank you for making it. Sometimes the food is going in.
Sound earnest, that sounds threatening.
Oh, sorry. Thank you for making it. You know, sometimes it's just through like, hey, people listening may have worked out we can't really be serious about stuff. Me and you are not serious people. But sometimes... So to get over that, you just make it silly, and I'll just like halfway through like making it, I'll go, thanks for making it. Like to just be like, I need to do the social modelling.
So I look forward to hearing that from your children in that voice now, because they've heard.
It's not always that voice, but you know what I mean. Sometimes you have to. It's almost like just going like, we're at home, we're safe. We know we all love each other, so let's play with the how do you know what friendship is? You have to break it. Yeah. How do you know what the oil is for socialization? Yeah. You have to play with it. You have to highlight, this is funny. Yeah. If we go like, or if you go the other way and you go, really, thank you for making it. Yeah. And like, just to kind of get the cogs moving and go like, oh, Daddy's being a silly twat now about saying thanks for me. Why does he say that? Oh, he says thanks for me. You know, it's like highlighting it in a different way.
Because if you think, because that's another argument.
It's connotation. It's connotation, isn't it? Like, I want there to be a positive connotation with those social elements, not my only relationship with the word thank you is begrudging and dictator. You know, like,
Yeah, well, there's a difference between like saying thank you and expressing gratitude, isn't there? Because saying thank you is just like, I say thank you, it is part of the routine, the exchange, and I don't feel anything. Whereas we do the same about food in our house, and I think it is genuinely about, as much as modelling the words, I find it about like actually literally taking that moment to be really grateful and go, oh, thanks, this is really nice, thank you for making it. And that modelling expressing gratitude is a whole other thing, but all really important, because that really is about like well-being for that person. You know, if you learn how to genuinely notice moments of gratitude, you will be a happier human being. So to model that is not just about socialisation, that is about personal like mental health. But I was going to say, like, what you're saying kind of highlights in a way the ridiculousness of these weird social rituals and routines, and everyone's going to make their own decision and draw their own line about what is kind of necessary, even though it's a bit weird, and what is just so ridiculous that I'm just not even going to bother with that. Do you know what I mean? And I'm trying to think of an example of something where for some people it will be like, oh no, that is an absolute given, I will definitely do that, and some people have just gone, well, that's in the bin now, because that is just really, why do we even do that anymore?
Well, I suppose one interesting one would be like handshakes.
Yes, I was thinking
and that. I remember like it being a thing that like shaking my grandparents' hand. No, not shaking my grandparents. Do you know what I mean? Like,
yeah. And then COVID got rid of it, and I'm so glad. Handshaking,
actually,
hugging,
do you know what I do?
Kissing people that, oh my god,
yeah,
that can all get in the bin, and luckily it has. So that's good for me. I love it.
I think my upbringing was very had some explicit moments in it where like the social conditioning was like it was very explicit, you know, like this is how we're going to do this, and the example I can think of is phone voice.
Oh yeah.
Right. So it was drilled into me. You have to have a phone voice, or I don't care how you speak when you're with your friends, but you need to be able, and that was what was impressed on me. It was like, you need to have the skills to turn this on and off for social mobility, for social, you know, you need to be able to talk to your friends in whatever way you want.
God, it sounds like drama school.
But
your
also,
accent in a box.
Well, it's that, isn't it? And that's masking, right? Call a spade a spade.
Yeah.
That's, you know, a neurotypical example of like masking and going, and like, yeah, if you're going to go and apply for a loan at the bank, you need to be able to pronounce things properly, and you need to, you know, and it does tick into, we're touching on the edge of some like alternative education stuff here, that is also about like physical social conditioning, like clothes that you wear, or how you have your hair styled, or what, you know, which is like, is a whole bigger thing, but it is a
class and everything, isn't it?
Yeah, but it is a similar thing in sort of being able, it's related to this thing of, you know, masking when you go and apply for a bank loan.
Well, yeah, like some schools will be really, really on it with uniform and haircuts, won't they? And have, you know, certain kind of things about being excellent and being smart and being like, you know, because if you are wearing the correct clothing and having the correct haircut, they'll put you in the right mindset, and the right mindset is, yeah, what society sees as being successful. But it's all a construct.
Well, yeah, and also a lot of that stems from, you need to be able to a greater or lesser degree, mask 6 to 8 hours a day, 5 days a week.
Yeah.
Because that's what the working world will be like. Guess what? It's getting less and less. I mean, from what I see, it's moving further and further away from that. And actually, is it a reasonable expectation to mask at that level for that long? You know, and especially when I think part of it can seem contradictory. I've wandered way off the social conditioning thing now, but I'm on a train and choo choo, it's going. That thing of like, it can seem hypocritical when there are simultaneous conversations about how do we help learners do their best and achieve the most. Also, they must be wearing the right uniform, and they must, you know, stop when the bell rings, and they must do these social niceties. You know, like, it's almost like you want to introduce those two conversations to each other and be like, hello one, have you seen this one? Because they're fucking linked. Like, you know, maybe.
Well, they're at odds, they're not linked.
No, but they're linked. You know, it's that thing of like, if you want learners to do better, look at the stuff you're asking them to do. Yeah. Could some of that energy instead be going towards the learning, the social skills? Yeah.
Well, yes, because the social conditioning of the bell and all the rest of it was designed for a different time, but it hasn't changed. So if you're trying to get a workforce to act on bells and follow routines, that was what was needed at the time that those things were introduced, but that is now no longer needed, but for some reason we think it's still needed in schools.
Can I tell you a tip that I learned the other day? Sure. And I've been doing it now for about a month and I love it. Right, I think for you it's going to be helpful as well.
Is it?
Right, so it was like saying when you're a project, like big projects, and it was saying stop when you know what your next step is. Stop early, because then it makes the restart easier, because you haven't got to get the gears going again. You know what the next bit is. So like if you're doing something on Excel, maybe like don't finish it and go like, I'm stuck now, so I'm going to stop a bit before you're stuck, so that when you come back to it, you go, I'm right into this thing now.
Great.
I'm right in. Or like nice. A whittling project or something, don't take it off and don't keep whittling until you're like, I don't know what to whittle anymore. Identify a bit and go, when I come back, that's the first bit I'm whittling off, and put it down and then come back.
Love it.
That's the opposite of the bell conditioning, because that's the other side, isn't it, of like endless big projects and doing whatever else. But I really like it, and it does work really well, because then you're excited to go back to the next bit, like, oh, I know what the step is, I'm gonna get that thing.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
It was really nice. I hope we haven't been too like one-sided. I think we've wandered quite a lot.
We have wandered quite a lot, and I'd be really interested I want to have this like discussion with more people.
Yeah.
And not in a way, like you say, not in a, I'm trying to change your mind. Just, I genuinely want to hear what you have to say about it, and maybe with some little anecdotes about, you know, experiences. Because I don't know what the answer is. Yeah. I don't know.
Well, obviously everybody is going to meet up at the conference because it's the FSA 10-year conference, isn't it? In October.
Yeah.
And there's like a save the date, but no, you know, tickets or anything. But like, maybe we can do some really meaty chats with people around a campfire in Essex. Yeah. Yeah. I'm getting cold.
Me too, really cold.
I'm getting cold. Right.
Okay.
Bye.
Bye.
You can get ad-free episodes of the Forest School podcast, as well as bonus episodes and exclusive access to upcoming guests to ask them questions before anybody else finds out about it, simply by visiting patreon.com/Children of the Forest.